Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of festival co-directors Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple, producer Sanjoy Keroy and all our colleagues from Teamwork Arts, we are pleased to welcome you to the virtual edition of JLF Toronto 2022. The wow literally translates to "Come in, you're welcome, there's room." The word and its translation is the essence of Shane Chartrand's latest work, The Wow, Progressive Indigenous Cuisine. Along with co-author Jennifer Cockrall-King, Chartrand explores the influence of culture, identity, people and stories on his culinary career. In a book that combines recipes, interviews and photographs, they tackle the nuances of creating a progressive indigenous cuisine rooted in ancient heritage while employing modern culinary techniques and knowledge. Madhushree Ghosh's "Khabar: An Immigrant Journey of Food, Memory and Family" deconstructs the way South Asian chefs maintain the elusive ties to their homelands while innovating traditional recipes in foreign kitchens. Together in this session, these three insightful writers reflect on the profound ability of food cultures to evolve while staying connected with the history of communities and cultures. Shane M. Chartrand represents one of Canada's leading chefs and is actively involved in the re-emergence of Indigenous cuisine in Canada. He has competed on television's Chopped Canada, Iron Chef Canada, and Fridge Wars. He is a judge on Wall of Chefs and has also featured in the award-winning documentary series Red Chef Revival. Jennifer Cockrell is a food culture writer and author of Food and the City, Urban Agriculture and the New Food Revolution, Food Artisans of the Okanagan, and the co-author of The Wow, Progressive Indigenous Cuisine. She is currently working on a book about seeds, seed saving, and seed bank around the world. Madhushree Ghosh, author of Khabar: An Immigrant Journey of Food, Memory and Family, a food narrative memoir, works in oncology diagnostics and is a social justice activist. Her work has been awarded the 2020 Notable Mention in the Best American Essays in Food Writing and has been published in the New York Times, Washington Post, Longreads, Catapult, Guernica, Bomb, Vogue India, High Country News, The Rumpus, Dame, Hippocampus, and others. All our sessions can be viewed on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Do follow our social media pages at JLF Litfest across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to be notified of the upcoming sessions, and stay tuned to jlflitfest.org/Toronto for the full schedule and information about our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, flavors of the past, dreams of the future, food and memory. Shane M. Chartrand and Jennifer Cockrall-King in conversation with Madhushree Ghosh. Madhushree, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anubhav, for the introduction, and welcome, Jennifer, and welcome, Shane. How are you doing? All right. Let's start with the book. First of all, congratulations. This is an amazing, amazing book that I have right here. And this is bedtime reading. This is kitchen reading. This is everything that I needed in my life, but I'm sure all the viewers and the readers appreciate this. Based on that conversation, I'd like to hear from you, Shane. How did the thought start after Wow? And when did it lead to a book?
Well, the thing is, I've always wanted to write a book. I just never, I've got a list of things that I still want to do. Whether they come true or whether they get close to coming true is basically the way I kind of do my thing. Like, I mean, I never expected a book to be I did not expect it to be this big. I was thinking kind of like, I don't know, coffee table-esque stuff, something you can kind of flick through and get some interesting ideas, but I didn't know it was going to go to life stories. Me and Jen got to know each other on a very personal note with this journey as well. But this book is was never intended. I always dreamed it was going to happen, but I didn't think it was going to be this successful. And it was just a thought. But the thing is, somebody else got us together. Like me and Jen didn't just come up, that we didn't just discuss this. We met at some seminar or whatever, and then we just decided that we were going to write a book. That's not how it even started. Jen can go a little deeper on that, but like we met people who knew people who knew people, and then boom, me and Jen are talking about a book, and I didn't even know how serious Jen really wanted to take it, to be honest. Because she's a writer, she's got her own life, she's got her own, and then all of a sudden I show up and just say, hey, you want to write a book? And then she was down with it, and then it started from there. But to be honest, you're asking a question that I've never even asked Jen, of why she said yes to that. So maybe she can even explain that part.
Yeah, I think I'm a science girl, so I'll talk about Brownian motion, which is, if you add a color, food color into water, and if it's like, let's say green, each green molecule is going to touch the other water molecule, and slowly the entire glass of water turns green. So it's, what are your interactions that you have to lead to a green glass of water? So I feel like that's what Tawau is. It's, people who knew each other, how you connected, what happened. So Jennifer, please do let me know. How was your thought process behind this?
Sure. I had been writing about food for 10 years, 15 years. I'd published a couple of books, and I'd heard about Shane, and we'd met each other at some events, but I had never actually, had a conversation with him. And a mutual friend of ours basically said, Shane wants to write a book. Is it okay if he calls you? And I said, of course, I'll tell him whatever he needs to know about how to write a book. And, it's a lot more difficult than many people think. It takes a lot more time than most people realize. And so, and I'd had lots of people ask me, can you help me write my book? As Madhushree, this, as soon as you publish a book, everyone wants to take you for coffee and download your entire brain, right?
I think it's more take you for drinks, so then you're pliable.
So I got a phone call actually one day from Shane, and it was just this instant connection, actually. So we were chatting on the phone. Shane is a really personable, interesting, genuine person, and immediately I was drawn into his personality, and he was just light and fun. And it was just at a time where I thought, I can help Shane. I can help get him from point A to point B, maybe introduce him to publishers, maybe get him a writer, somebody from the Indigenous community, because that would have been a natural instinct as well, to have somebody who's an Indigenous writer help Shane write his book. Anyways, we chat. We have a good time. We talk all the time. He jokes around. He lifts me up when I'm feeling down. We do the same for one another. And after going a certain distance down the road for months and months and months about talking about this, he just kept saying, you're the writer. I want you to write the book. So it took me a while to say yes, not because I didn't want to commit the time, but I didn't know if I was the right person. But I'm happy with Shane's laser focus that this was what we were going to do.
That's great. Yeah, if you read, I'm just going to keep showing this book because it's so fascinating. Just how it looks, the feel of the book, the war paint. I think as soon as you see this, you can't put it down. So both of you did an amazing job. I think this is what food collaborations should be. Writing collaborations should be where you're respectful of each other, but also try to bring the best of each other out. So thank you for that. So let's go down the path of talking about flavors of the past, because Shane, this is a very ambitious book. It's not, I would love to say, the 75 recipes in there are great. Anybody can do it, but it really is a conversation with the reader, especially the reader who may or may not understand where the Indigenous people were, what happened, and where it's going. So the structure of the book is very fascinating to me. So Shane, let's talk about you, your life, and what you shared. What you shared could have been a very tragic story. It could have been a very, this is what happened and let's rage against the system. And yet what you've done is a very hopeful one. So how did you think about it? Or was it always your plan, given your ancestry, your heritage, and the fact that there are multiple indigenous communities that are based on the food that you create and how you are now?
Well, the thing was, there was never any intent to talk about my life and my upbringing. That had nothing to do with the book initially. But I'm also an Aries. And if you believe in signs, you know, I'm a competitor. I like to look the way I look. And I also have a heart where I just sort of melt over certain things. So that pretty much sums me up for sure. And it's funny because the more I look into signs and stars and elements and the indigenous ways, I follow it very, very closely, and it does match me. Now, the thing was, I never expected to spend time with my life, and that's not my life. That's only a little snippet, because I didn't want it to be so serious. I wanted the book to be open enough so kids, adults, elders, anybody who's reading the book can identify the problems that they have in their lives, that somebody is willing to write in a cookbook for everyone to see. I did not get tattoos because I'm a chef. I used to suffer from anxiety. Yes, it was pretty bad for many years. It's gone now. You know, I've had all these issues in my life, but they're no issues that nobody else. Oh, the tattoos are not a problem. The reason I'm bringing that up is because I didn't get them because it's cool to be a tattooed chef. That had no intention. It's everything I do is thought out. I don't get too deep into it. I don't overthink stuff either. Sometimes I do. It depends on what it is. But in regards to the book and the artistry and the pictures, I mean, Jen was really responsible for figuring me out, because you got to realize how do you envelope somebody in a book and make a book really who they are. And from the beginning to the end of that book, it's me, but it's Jen figuring it out at the same time to express the things about my life and about what's important. Because I could get deeper, like your life. I'm sure you've got some major struggles. I'm a 60 scoop survivor. I didn't talk about that really. The time in foster care, I didn't talk about that because at the end of the day, it's a cookbook about inspiration. It's a cookbook about food, and that's really what it's all about. It's really all about food. And those stories are made for people to just on their own come out, because Chef Shane Chartrand did in a cookbook. Now I'm not afraid.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about your life till you were 7, which you haven't said much about, but you've certainly been very honest about it. It really helps people who are going through the foster care system. What happened and why did you have to go in there in order to find your parents who have basically taught you everything, and for you to understand your own heritage besides theirs? So I think that there was one point where it's noted, I've written it down, of Cree ancestry and Métis upbringing. I think that is such a beautiful statement to highlight the indigenous people, that it's not a conglomerate, that it's not just one tribe, and the fact that the upbringing of where you were, whether it was foraging, whether it was hunting, whether it was the food that was made in your house versus what you're making now, really brings about. You don't have to write a huge chapter on it, Shane. I think what you wrote was fantastic, and I recommend all the listeners and readers to read that and get to understand what the foster care system can or cannot do successfully.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the foster care system is terrible. I didn't have I only had one really bad experience, but overall, I mean, I was watched upon, I was cared for. You know, I mean, there's moments where I didn't feel like I was really cared for, but I mean, what do you do when you're going from one house to one house to one house? I was in 10 homes before 7. And I mean, who's going to really love you as a kid? And that's where the connection from family and myself didn't really make any sense, especially considering like when I look at people, I still do it now. When I look at people, the biggest thing I look at is their kids and their eyes of their mom or dad, because I never got that opportunity to see my eyes of my mom or my smile or whatever. That's not trauma though. That's just something that I specifically find very interesting because I never got that moment. I never got I don't know what my mom's traits are. I don't know what my dad's traits are or how they act or how they think and where did I come from? Like, where did this imagination of mine come from? Why do I think the way I do in regards to art and feelings? And there's things that, it's funny, even if I go to an art gallery, there's things I'll just walk by and whatever, I don't think much of it, but then someone will come chasing me down. No, you don't understand. But my point is, like, I just pick and choose what I like, the reason I like it. And to wow with that striking front page, it was a tough one. We had I think Jen knows, I think we had about 3 different covers.
I'll show it again.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not trying to be the guy to say this, but it's a fact. I don't know if I've ever seen a cookbook cover like that.
No.
Yeah, that's sort. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, Jennifer.
It's when we were trying to come up with the cover, we had different names for the book. We had a working title that we were using for a long, long time. And it was actually the publisher that came up with the word to wow, which is welcome, come in, there's room. Because once they'd read the manuscript, they understood the ethos of the book was celebration, invitation, everybody's welcome at the table. I'm welcome at the table, right? As a non-Indigenous person. And Shane just has this celebratory way about him, and he brings people together over food. So To Wow is a great title. And then I would say, Shane, your signature dish, which, for lack of a better word, what does that even mean? But the red handprint, it's provocative, it's in your face, it has a whole lot of cultural content, both in the Indigenous and non-Indigenous community. It was just like you couldn't pass that cookbook by without stopping to see what it's about. So it's got this welcoming aspect to the title, and also, but we're going to be real. This is a real thing that we're talking about, and it's got power. That image has a lot of power in it, which I love. I'm very proud of the cover.
I feel like there is a subversiveness to a title that is not from the English dictionary, primarily because, my book, khabar, is a Bengali word. I chose it specifically, and my publishers were very interested in that because it's also a play on a Hindi or Urdu word, khabar, which is news. And I wanted to use food. Khabar means food in Bengali. Food and news. What do you talk about when you talk about food? So I feel Tawau is very similar in that, one, you get to learn a non-Indigenous word. You get to learn about what welcome means in a community that you may not be familiar with. You're talking about someone who lives that life and his world around Tawau, alongside a co-writer who's also talking about what the future of food and future of Indigenous communities and food is. So thank you so much for that. I wanted to change this slightly and talk a little bit more about this being more than a cookbook. In that, Shane, you've used interviews, you've used little snippets of people who've influenced you or you're working with, including your parents, as well as the tattoo artist, and Chef Ryan O'Flynn. So could you talk about that? How did you choose them, and what was the purpose behind it? That is not standard cookbook fare.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, some of those people are friends. They're not close friends. They're just people that I know. Ryan O'Flynn is a great chef, and he's in his own right. He's done things from his belief system. Did you know Ryan O'Flynn was the first guy in Edmonton, the first chef in Edmonton that's told me specifically, we're outside the Westin Hotel, downtown Edmonton. He's like, it's disgusting, and it disgusts me that Canadian food is not Indigenous food. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And at the Westin, he tried to do his own version of what that looks like. And it's the first time it's ever been done in a setting in a hotel like that. And let's be honest, we all know what hotel food looks like. We all know what hotel. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. It always ends up to be on a spoon in a reception, or it ends up to be the chef with the tallest hat walking through with Shin Rotisserie badges and awards. It's just always the same way. And Ryan twisted it around to become Indigenous. And that's when my head turned. I'm like, now why is this guy talking like this? Because that could be very, he's walking a very thin line talking about that because of protocol. And protocol is very, very important. And there's so much to protocol. It just goes on and on and on and on. I learned here in Banff from the Stoney Nakoda. I'm learning from the Blackfoot even more about what that means. But anyway, he said that, and that's why we chose him. We just picked him because Jen knew him. I knew him, as we knew his dad's a legacy in the culinary arts world. And Ryan's a big mouth. And I mean that in a good way. Sometimes I can be a big mouth in a good way. Sometimes we just want to spit out our points. And whether you get offended, whether you don't, we know how to do it properly without offending. But you never know. But Ryan needed to be in the book. Cowboy Smith is another friend of mine. He's closer, though. Cowboy's a lot closer, but he doesn't know anything about food. So now there's another person that he's extremely intelligent. He understands the Blackfoot really well. That's his, he's part of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and he understands that world very well. Now, you got to remember, I'm surrounded by a lot of Indigenous people that have a lot of knowledge bundles and information that I get every day. I got that at the River Crew Resort Casino. I'm getting it even more here. But Cowboy Smith, because he doesn't know food, and I'm talking about food like me and you know, like me and Jen know, like professional cooking, restaurants. He doesn't really care for that world that much. But the more we worked together, the more he understood food, the more he got to the point, and then boom, his words made sense. And Lori Buffalo is a very strong Indigenous woman that you dare mess with, Lori Buffalo. But she's also very smiley. Her mom is beautiful. Lori is, I can't say enough words of how she's got to where she is, all by herself, all alone. And she loves what I cook. So I just felt that was important too, because it's as simple as just that. She loves what I cook. And that's it.
And that's what it pulls it back to, which is it's all about food, even if you're looking at different people's perspectives on what food is about. Maybe, I know you brought up your tattoos. Maybe we should talk about it because yes, the standard impression is if it's a celebrated chef, the chef has tattoos. However, you had two parts to this. You explained why you got the tattoos when you got them, and the fact that you still don't regret your tattoo when you got it at age 20, which I think is a masterpiece because everybody regrets their tattoos at 20. And then, you know, and then the tattoo artist on what they did and how they did it and what they say no to. I think they said we will not work on someone who's Googled their tattoo and asked us to make something out of it. So do talk about that.
Well, my tattoo artist, because like you got to realize that the Chinese, the Japanese, before I figured out where I was from, which is the Enoch tribe that's beside Edmonton. Before I found out where I was from, I resignated the Japanese style food and Chinese, by the way, too. And I'm talking about deeper Chinese, ancient Chinese. It started by Suser Lee, who's a Canadian chef, well-known chef. I liked what he did. I was pretty young still too, but like, you got to realize my dreaming of food was way, it was in my mid 20s when I was thinking, I don't think that chicken cordon bleu is my world. I don't think that veal or whatever. Like, there's just so many things, beef Wellington and all these French dishes and stuff. And that's not like going against the French at all and what I was taught. But I just felt there's a different direction for me to go. Anyway, back to my artist. My tattoo is a very Japanese, Asian inspired tattoo. And they all are. Because that's where I started. That's what made me start cooking. That's what made me start loving food. And then later, at a later age, I realized that the Asians and we and us indigenous people here in Canada are very similar. If you go to the West Coast, you're eating fried rice, which is an indigenous dish, which I did not know until I went to Prince Rupert and King Kolet, where I got these hand poke tattoos on my neck. So they all mean something. And yes, my artist refused to do a few things, and he's, just think about it and come back to me. Because, when I was young, when in my 20s, I had these ideas of grandeur, of what my tattoos would look like. And they're a little out to lunch, and he wasn't really, he's like, no, he gave me some ideas, and then I'd go back home and I didn't quite understand. So I waited, for my first tattoo that was on my back, which is my parents' initial. It's beautiful, actually. To now, years later, when I finished up my sleeves and the scroll on my arm, my hand, my mind was in a different place, a more mature place, a better place. And I don't mean negative. I mean, just grown up, basically. So I made the choices of my tattoos a lot more clearer. And they do mean something. Some of them don't. Some of them, what does that tattoo mean? I'm like, well, there's a tattoo of an indigenous woman on my shoulder, but I just got it because I love tattoos of women's faces. I think they look beautiful. I think they can look mean. And I did a podcast called Beautiful and Mean. And that's kind of what that reminds me of. Because like myself, I like flowers. I love roses. I love a good movie where I can cry and not even feel bad about it. But then I like things that are tattoos. I like Harleys. I like rock and roll. I like metal music. But then I'm listening to Bon Jovi in the shower. I don't know. I'm hoping that answers the tattoo questions. It's just,
I think.
Well, and also Nikita Trimble, who did your hand poke tattoo, was very specific with Shane not wanting to. So it was a process of learning, of sharing her cultural indigeneity and her art, and Shane, and actually pushing Shane to discover a bit more about what traditional Cree tattoos looked like. And then I get this picture on my phone of Shane freshly hand poke tattooed on his neck.
I think it's dramatic and it's beautiful, but more importantly, it tells a story of where you come from. I mean, which is literally what we are talking about, is dreams of the future, but you're talking about flavors of the past. Right?
So I gotta touch one on my neck tattoo. Now I've got a big tattoo here on this side, a Hatigua eagle, and I got a Hatigua bear on this side. I got my hand, I got my shoulder, I got my leg, I got my whole sleeve. But these tattoos on my neck were the most painful. Now you got to realize, like people don't realize, I've got a whole sleeve that goes all the way up, and it's Japanese tattoo with food all over. There's artichokes, there's squid, there's scallops, there's dragon fruit. There's all kinds of fun things. But anyway, what this tattoo represents is courage. And she said, you now have a role and a responsibility to teach people what this process means and what it means to you and what it means to me and our people. And that's why I fell in love with Nikita Trimble.
I think everybody fell in love with Nikita Trimble. That essay will stay with me forever. But it also talks about appropriation. It talks about, what we can or cannot do, and how you, as a chef who holds on to indigenous food, what is your responsibility when you pass that knowledge over to the next generation? And I think that essay is a must read for everybody, especially folks like us who are trying to learn the history and the future of this cuisine. So thank you for including these influences in the book. It is essential that a cookbook really tells people where you come from and where you're headed. So speaking of that, can we talk about fry bread?
Yeah, sure.
I think everybody needs to talk about fry bread. The first time I had it, it tasted like a bhatura for me. It's a chole bhatura dish for me, which is very Indian, very deep fried, very fantastically comfort food. So I know there are many views on fry bread, and I'd love to hear what you're doing with it, because it's part of the community, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, it's part of the community just because we were growing up with it. And people make great fry bread, bannock. Bread is obviously part you. I don't think I need to tell either of you, because you both understand that the world is surrounded by all different types of bread. I'm on my way to Egypt tomorrow, and I had to look up some recipes on Egyptian bread. I've never heard of it before. So I'm excited. The chef's going to bring me around and show me some ancient Egyptian dishes that they used to years ago. So now we're not silly. We're not stupid. We're old enough to understand that bread is a very big part of everywhere we go, from roti to, what was that bread that I just looked up? It doesn't matter. Anyway, bannock is obviously not our bread, but we inherited it just like any gift. You don't give back a gift. As I was told about bannock, and we've kind of created it to be what ours is now. There's questions about, well, there was no leaveners back then, so baking powder, baking soda. Some people I'm hearing are using eggs in their bannock, which is strange to me, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to look down that path, because I just learned this maybe about 2 weeks ago that some people are doing eggs. Anyway, bannock is something that we all celebrate, and for sure, whenever you go to potlatch, if you're going to ceremony, it's always going to be there. It's something that we created, that's made it to what it is today, I believe. I'm not a historian. I don't remember what bannock would have tasted like, 200 years ago, but certainly it is to be celebrated. And it's the same old story. You make bread from your background. Jen makes bread from her background, and everyone picks on it. You can't make it as good as me. Oh, your bannock's okay. And so it always goes back to those old family stories, which also contributes to food stories, life, laughter. Bannock is delicious. It's not good for you, but who says you can't break the laws here and there?
I think it's got to do with comfort. What is your comfort food, right? And I'm going to ask both of you the same question. When you're tired and you come back home after a long trip, what is your go-to food and why? So I'll start with Chef Shane here.
When I go, okay, so then I'll think about when I come back here from my long trip I'm going to take. It's always going to be, and it always is, it's a pretty standard answer, I think, that we're all going to say. It's going to be your chilies, your stews, your bread, something to warm your soul and make you sleep, and with a big smile on your face. I mean, how many? It's funny. It's funny, that kind of food is so important to our soul. And when I sat there, I was doing ceremony here in Banff at a place called Cave and Basin, and we had this stew with rice in it. And it's also going back to the Chinese, because we don't necessarily totally know the truth about the Chinese versus the indigenous. If we were here before them, the same time, we don't know. So rice is a very big part of our food world. And when I tried that bison stew with rice, it was, but I fell in love with it after I finished the bowl, of course.
Of course. Yeah, we have to talk about bison before we go, but so hold that thought. Jennifer.
Well, there's something magical about, a good dumpling. And basically I have memories of coming home from school. Shane and I both grew up in a very cold part of Canada, the north of Canada, the northern part of Canada, but not the north, I should say. And you come home from school and mom had made, stew or some sort of turkey soup, but dropped little dumplings on top, and they would steam and they would absorb some of the delicious flavors. So yeah, soup and carbohydrate.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, what do you need? What do you need when you're cold and you want to be comforted is some form of stew or soup. Thank you for that. Shane, I wanted to talk about bison. The reason why I say that is it's number one, you're talking about foraging and you're talking about hunting growing up. So that's certainly part of your life. But more importantly, bison is not a South Asian thing because obviously they don't wander Southern Asia or China for that matter. But also if you're looking at American food or so-called Western food, bison is not the go-to red meat.
It's not.
Right. And in South Asia, I'm just drawing parallels. That's why I find your book so fascinating. In South Asia, I've talked a lot about goat meat because rest of the world eats goat meat, but not America. And I feel like bison has a similar quality. And I love how you have actively shown the different parts of the animal that can be used and how you as indigenous people, you don't waste any part of the animal. So talk about bison dishes that you put in the book, but also what it means to you.
It's funny because I'm going through something right now today where I can't get bison tongue into the resort. And they say it's because it's part of the brain, or sorry, part of the head. So the bison head certified. I think, Jen, you know this, no?
Yeah, there's through the industrial food system, there's parts, there's so much waste. Yeah.
So in our world, we use everything. And when we shoot a bison, some people will actually pray. I've never done it before. It's just a part of the learning process about you shoot an animal and you gotta pray and thank the animal for giving its life and stuff like this. But I mean, the whole thing about using every single cut is important because it's just sustainability. It's as simple as that. The flavor of bison, though, is definitely different. It's a lot stronger. It's a lot more red in color. I just got some bison sirloins in the other day. It definitely has a gamier flavor than regular beef. And it doesn't even matter what kind of beef. It could be like AAA, it could be prime. It does not taste the same. And when your body is used to that kind of flavor, that kind of intensity, you're just used to it. Obviously, this gets into things like diabetes and issues with dietary restrictions and but using every single part of the bison is important for clothing, for weapons, and for everything that goes along with it. So that's it. That's a normal kind of survival. Those are just basic survival tips. Anyone would do it anyways, but it's also how you do it, and it's also how different and how creative you become. I think sometimes if I was to live way back then, how creative I would be to use all the different cuts of meat or not. I don't know. But here's one last thing I'll leave with bison. It's all delicious. It's totally different in taste. Goat is obviously something I like. And I'll tell you why I like goat is because goat is flavorful. It's oily. It's got a different type of flavor, very strong forward. And what people forget about goat is the fact that there's so much flavor that you can play with. Bison isn't as strong, but bison's strong in a different direction. It's kind of hard to explain. But
I think when you come down to San Diego, I'll make it for you, and then you can tell me.
Well, a lot of people have made goat at their homes. A lot of my friends, from India, from all over, and you can't compare. We know this already, though. We can't compare restaurant food here in Edmonton or Calgary or anywhere really compared to home Indian food or Sri Lankan food or anything in that area. It's unbelievable. Oh my God. And it's funny because even the vegetarian food blows my mind.
Yeah, because 30% of the population is that, but also, you know, the latest thing that's happening is, you know, what is gluten-free, what is vegan. And if you really look at it, Indian food, we've never struggled with that. We've had so many different.
You're right. And
Right?
so that along with Europeans is like the Mediterranean, lots of fresh flavor with very little and delicious and just cracks you forward. Indigenous food with the bison and the pemmican, little different because of where we are. It gets minus 45 here. It can. I mean, it's been quite a few years, but I mean, still, that's ice sticking together weather.
Oh,
I'm not
wow.
even kidding you. Jen can relate. Like, I remember days we get up and our eyes are sticking, our eyelashes are frozen together. Now imagine, how are you going to survive going from plane to plane to plane as Indigenous people? Pemmican, bison, you name it. We needed these things to extend those bridges to get across Canada.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned that in your family you had a lot of root vegetables that you grew, and then your mother would save them. So, you know, it just makes sense to do that in a place that's that cold. I'm going to change this topic a little bit and ask Jennifer about your book on seed and seed saving. You've talked about it a little bit, and it doesn't have much to do with Tawau right now, but it certainly has everything to do with dreams of the future and food and memory. So can we get a little bit on that?
Sure, thank you. Well, I find each of my books sort of leads to the next. And so after Tawau, well, before I was writing Tawau, I had been traveling around the world going to seed banks, to St. Petersburg in Russia, to Svalbard up in the Arctic, the Norwegian Arctic. Just putting together these trips that I could go to as I could with the money that I had. So you just do it very slowly. But it's all about what is the base of food, right? And what is the basis of food, and the journey of Tawau, and one of the many gifts of writing Tawau with Shane is having the privilege of being exposed to an Indigenous worldview that taught me all the things that I, you know, blow my mind, and I should have known many years before, but it's okay. You walk the path when you walk the path. So the relationship between seeds and the people who eat the food. So it changed. I was writing about seed banks, and it was a very sterile sort of topic in my mind, even though I was really interested in it. I'm a, maniacal gardener, and I love gardening and I love seed saving. But it was when I was writing Tawau that I realized that the seeds produce the plants, and the plants and the people work together to make the food, and the culture of the people who eat the food inform what seeds you save. So this whole circle of relationality. And I know this is sort of I'm late to the game in this relationship way of thinking, but that's the culture that I was raised in the non-Indigenous way, where everything was compartmentalized, everything was separate, everything stuck to its lane, and not having the knowledge of the relationships between, everything. So I'm kind of coming to this late at life and enjoying putting the pieces of my seed bank book together in a very new way post Tawau. So I've been working on the book for 10 years, and it's going to be a very different book, thanks to Shane, people in the community that I've met, and just, basically expanding my brain.
Thank you for that. Shane, last words from you on what you think Tawau is doing. And what you're doing.
My last words on what I think Tawau is doing.
Yes.
Well, I'll say that I'm surprised how good it's doing, but I keep forgetting about it. I'm not gonna lie to you, like because every time I get a copy, I tend to give it away. That's just the way I am, and I never really You know what? I haven't even read the whole thing. I'm not gonna lie to you. Tell me that's not terrible.
It's not
You've
terrible.
read
It's not
I just,
terrible.
it's
it.
just sweet.
Maybe
I mean, imagine if you were to be able to do a video of us doing this book together, the behind the scenes, same as you too, right? I mean, your moments of frustration, your moments of personal issues, your life, your family, your kids, your moments where you had to put it on pause and or push stop to clear some things away. And then you get back to it and you're like, what am I doing this for? Is this even worth my time? Like, I mean, we know we're not going to make any money. The whole point of this book was to make a big impact. I'm not kidding you. You can ask Jen, that was the point, was to write a book to make a big, solid impact on what Indigenous food means, my life, and make people feel warm, welcome. They want to eat, they want to be involved, and maybe we can change some lives in this somehow. I don't know how we change lives in words, in books. And I know you seminars and stuff. I get it, but in a cookbook, I don't know if you can do that in a cookbook. So yeah, I am so thrilled. I don't know what to tell you.
No, you should be so proud. I think you have certainly changed my life and everybody else who reads this book. So thank you both. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Jennifer, for the time. And we will end the recording here, but thank you again for all your time and best of luck for the future.
thanks,
Thank you.
Madhushree.
Thank you, Shane, Jennifer, and Madhushree, and sincere thanks to everyone that joined us online for this virtual edition of JLF Toronto. We'll be back in person next year.